Welcome to Crime in Court. This is the 1996 Menendez brothers trial. Erik and Lyle Menendez on trial for the homicides of their parents, Kitty and Jose. We are on the defense's case, part 36, and Erik Menendez is still on the stand during his direct examination with Mr. Levin doing the questioning for the defense. We are going to just, excuse me, an itch. We're gonna dive right in. Whenever I wear my hair down, I hate it because it makes my face itch. So I'm always scratching my face on camera. So I apologize. But anyways, so we're gonna dive right back in to where we left off, which was December 8th, 1995. A recess was just taken in the morning, so now we're coming back from that. And let's get started here. All right, so the court says, okay, I've been informed there's nothing outside the presence of the jury, so we'll have the jury come out. Jury entered the courtroom, and the following proceedings were held. Court says, okay, the jury is in the jury box. You may continue your direct examination. Mr. Levin says, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, were there times where you would be on the tennis court in the presence of both your father, or both your brother and your father? Yes. And was tennis a time when occasionally where your father expressed violence towards you? Objection. Vague as to time. Overruled. Erik says, do you mean in the training methods he used or in reaction to? Just a very general question. Of all the times that you were playing tennis during that period of time, was that a source of violence by your father towards you? Yes. And was this something that happened occasionally or something that happened quite frequently? I'm still not sure what you're asking me. Are you asking in the way that he trained me or in the reaction to how I was training? Both. It would be both. Because the way the techniques he used to train his sons were definitely, I wouldn't even say borderline abusive. I would say they were 100% abusive. Did your father ever hit you or use violence against you on the tennis court? Yes. Had he done so on more than one occasion? Yes. Now, was there an occasion where your father used physical violence against you in the presence of your brother, Lyle Menendez? Every weekend. We had a tennis court in our backyard, and every weekend we would train in the backyard for 6 or 7 hours a day. That alone, right there, is abusive, especially when they're not getting meals and things like that. They are being forced to be out there in exhaustion, in the heat after playing for several hours, and they would be forced against their will to be doing this for basically all of their free time. He continues on and says, I was out there all day, every Saturday and Sunday with my brother. So anytime I was on the tennis court with my father, my brother would always be there. In this particular incident where your brother Lyle Menendez protected you from violence that had occurred to you from your father while you were on the tennis court, I remember a time that he tried to comfort me when my father was being violent. What happened? I was on the same side of the court as my father. My brother was on the opposite side of the court, and my brother would hit the ball to Lyle, I mean to my father, one to my father and one ball to me. And during the practice, when you're on the court and it's not in a break, we were supposed to keep our feet moving every second. So you cannot stand still in Jose Menendez's presence when you're on the tennis court. Our feet were continually supposed to be dancing, so to speak, for aerobic exercise, and it was late in the day, And I was tired and I was dragging my feet, and my father gave me a warning and found me dragging my feet again and grabbed me and threw me against the fence and lifted me up by my shirt above the ground. And my brother ran over, and I had started to cry. And my brother ran over, and behind my father, he was trying to tell me not to cry because it would just make it worse. He couldn't say anything, but he was using his hands to just try to tell me to tell me he was there. It's okay. And just to try to relax. Did the presence of your brother calm your father? Objection. Calls for speculation. Court says rephrase the question. Did the presence of your brother calm you? Yes. He didn't rephrase the question at all. He said the exact same question. Oh, wait, no, he didn't. He said, did your brother calm your father? Did the presence of your brother calm you? Okay, yes. Okay, never mind. That's different. He was asking if it was the father being calmed, and now this is Erik being calmed. He says yes. Did it stop your father? No. Court says, could we have a time frame when this occurred? Mr. Levin says yes. The witness says, I was 11 or 12 years old. Mr. Levin says, now directing your attention. Oh, I'm sorry. I had left the break with a question pending. And that was, why do you feel that Lyle Menendez would be able to communicate with your father concerning the essay that you believed that was going to continue after you graduated high school? Did Lyle Menendez have a particular method to which he communicated with his father that caused you to believe that he was effective at doing so? I guess the answer to that question is yes. And what method comes to your mind? Lyle would, in talks that he was to have with my dad, prepare an outline of what he was going to say. Because when you spoke to my father, you got so nervous and he would trip you up with different questions that Lyle tended to stutter and began stuttering, and dad would make fun of him stuttering. So he prepared an outline after speech or the things that he wanted to talk about and the ways that he wanted to talk about it so that he could get the information across to my father. And he did that from the time I was like 6 and he was 9. I remember him writing down on a piece of paper the things that he wanted to convey to make sure that they got conveyed. This is a very significant aspect of Lyle's upbringing that kind of gets not overshadowed, but it kind of gets the importance of it is kind of minimized by the fact that it's coming in through this testimony is coming in through Erik. So this is another example of Lyle doesn't get to testify, so it has to come in through Erik, but you're not hearing the emotion that and the way that it affect Lyle significantly having to prepare conversations for his father. Just to have a conversation at dinner. To have a conversation with his dad, he had to come with notes, you know? So that doesn't get quite conveyed, I think, when it's coming in by Erik's testimony rather than Lyle. Those were points that he was going to go over with your father. Points that he was going to go over, information about the points so that he would remember it under the pressure of talking to dad. Would he bring the list with him in your presence when he talked to your father? Yes. And you would see him using the list? Yes. Was your brother a stutterer? Is that what you said? He stuttered a good portion of his early life, which I would think was probably due to fear and anxiety for, saying the wrong thing in front of his dad. Probably um, the outlines probably helped. And I think even his dad told him to do these outlines to make sure that he didn't forget things. And because he always gave the boys like weird assignments to work on. So something like making an outline for our conversations might be something he would have done. All right. So do your father make fun of you? Did your father make fun of or ridicule Lyle Menendez for any other frailties that he had? Yes. Mr. Khan says objection irrelevant. Sustained. The answer stricken. How's that irrelevant? When we're trying to show a pattern here, again, we're trying to show a pattern of the way that Jose mistreated the brothers to the point that it was to the detriment of their mental health. And yet you can't talk about it. And ridiculing somebody would definitely be relevant, I would think. I don't know. Apparently, Stanley Weisberg is more knowledgeable at this than I am, and he says it's not relevant. All right, Mr. Levin goes on and says, going back to Tuesday, or going forward to Tuesday, August the 15th, 1989, just 5 days before the death of your parents, did you tell Lyle Menendez the details and the extent of the essay, the brutality that your father had inflicted upon you? No. Was there a reason why you did not do so? There were, I suppose, a couple of reasons. Well, what was the reason that you had? Aside from the fact that I was just embarrassed and it was humiliating, his questions at the time weren't the most gracious. He asked me, why? Did I like it? Did I want it? Why I never stopped it? Why I didn't come to him earlier? Accusatory, right? So it's like victim blaming almost. And at least that's what it's going to feel like to Erik when he's trying to open up about something and something that's very difficult for him to open up about. And then if he gets ridiculed, he's not going, or even questioned like that, where it comes off in an accusatory manner. He's not going to want to answer questions and get defensive. So you shut down. So I didn't want to go into the details, but I also didn't want to scare him off. He was my last hope at that point, and I didn't want to frighten him away in terms of the extent or the threats that Dad had given me about telling Lyle, and I didn't want him to say, hey, Erik, my life is going well. I'm sorry. I didn't think he would, but I didn't want to take the chance because Erik, in all fairness, or I'm sorry, Lyle, in all fairness, had a pretty good life at this point going. He was living outside of the house. He was going to college. He was pretty much on his own. He was on the other side of the country and he was planning on going back to school. So there were he had opportunities and he wasn't completely bogged down by Jose's oppression. Erik, on the other hand, didn't have that luxury because, as we know and we learned in the last video, Erik testified that he was basically told he was going to UCLA and he was only going to be staying there a few nights a week, and the rest of the time he was going to be back at home. Meaning to him, and I'm sure in reality, it would have meant that the abuse was going to continue on. So that was Jose controlling controlling the situation and letting Erik know I still control you. And yeah, so Erik was desperate at that moment. And he didn't want, like I said, he didn't, or like he just said, he didn't want to take the chance that Lyle would maybe get scared off or whatever, not decide that he wasn't going to help him because he didn't want to rock the boat type of thing. Had it been made clear to you, Mr. Menendez, throughout the years that you were subjected to the acts of violence and CASA by your father that you were not to reveal that these things were occurring? Yes. Now, did your father make it clear to you that what would happen if you did disclose that these events were occurring between you and he? Yes. And what was it that he made clear to you would happen? That I would be KILLED, uh, that I would be, that my life would be taken, that he would be taken. Whoever I told to keep the secret, his life would be taken, told me that he would take the life of my dog, Velvet, but generally it was directed towards Lyle. So basically threatened to take Lyle's life if Erik, because he knew that Erik, uh, looked or sought Lyle for help. He knew that Lyle was kind of a refuge for Erik. So, and the dog, I'm sure, things that Erik loved deeply. He meeting Lyle and the dog, those were the two things that he could threaten. Did you have those things in mind when you made the choice not to talk about the details and the extent of what you had been through with your father? Yes, I certainly didn't want to tell Lyle that all the threats that Dad had made about telling Lyle, afraid that he wouldn't confront my dad. Did I hear you say you were afraid your brother would leave you? Yes. Why would you be afraid that your brother would leave you? I just had images in my mind from times in the past. I remember there was a time when I was young when Lyle was running away, and instead of taking me with him, he took Cookie Monster, one of his stuffed bears. Well, we know Lyle loved his stuffed animals like more than anything. One of his stuffed animals that he had, and felt very empty inside when he took Cookie Monster instead of me. His life at the time was going well, and I thought that maybe this was a pretty drastic thing that I was asking him to help me with, and I was just afraid that he would. I don't know if it was the right way to feel or not. Why would you think that your brother had taken a stuffed toy instead of you as opposed to just leaving and taking a stuffed toy with him? I blanked on the question. Why would you think that your brother was taking a stuffed toy instead of you, as opposed to just packing his bags and throwing it in and leaving? Because I knew how important Lyle, like, had 50 or 100 stuffed animals, and they were a different world for him. Objection calls for speculation. The court says sustained as to the answer as non-responsive. Did Lyle Menendez have a significant emotional attachment to stuffed animals that you were aware of and had participated in? Objection, irrelevant, calls for speculation, sustained. This was a big portion of Lyle's testimony also, and now they can't get into it. This is some BS, man. I'm getting mad reading through this. I'd be furious if I weren't so heartbroken about just the world right now and Charlie Kirk and everything. But yeah, this is making me very not happy. This judge, well, first of all, let me say this to preface my what I was gonna say. So I was going through and separating out future episodes because I only do like so many at a time, and I'll prepare and break down the different sections for our testimony or for our different episodes. And so as I was doing that, I was viewing that there are a lot of conferences where it's just, the attorneys and the judge, and we're hearing arguments about what evidence can and can't come in while Eric's still on the stand. So there's going to be some breaks and some portions of argument in between Eric's testimony because Of course, everything is objected to, and all a lot of the stuff that came in the first trial is being uh, denied. It's not being admitted. The Cookie Monster, if you guys remember from the first trial when Lyle was on the stand, he had a whole array of stuffed animals, and he loved them and like sought comfort in them from the time that he was very, very little up until he was a teenager, practically an adult. And he even, to one of his girlfriends, he had signed a card about, something, any, whatever it was, and he wrote love Cookie Monster and all the different, he named like all the different stuffed animals he had. And at that point, he was an adult, I think, or, nearly an adult at that time. So it just goes to show that he was very attached to his stuffed animals, and that was a big part of it. And one of the reasons why that's important, I should say, is because it goes back to he was self-soothing as a child when he was traumatized, when he was being essayed by Jose, he would seek comfort afterwards in his animals and things like that. So, and every time, there was any kind of physical or verbal abuse, he was there, in his room. He could spend hours and hours just with his stuffed animals because that was his like escape. So it's a very, very relevant portion of Lyle's testimony. And again, because Lyle's not testifying, it's not coming in. But it should, because it's not irrelevant, which is what Mr. Khan's objection is. It's actually very relevant. But I think they're trying to say because Lyle's not testifying that like all this stuff shouldn't come in. But that doesn't make it irrelevant. It makes it absolutely still relevant. So I think that's a bad objection, um, and a bad call by the court. Anyways, Mr. Levin says, who did? Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, may we approach? Not on this subject. Mr. Levin says, I'm hearing things behind me that are quite distressing. The court says, Is there any reaction of the audience of any sort? The person who's making that demonstration will be removed from the courtroom and not be permitted to return, so everybody keep that in mind. Mr. Levin says, Thank you. I don't know what that was. Something happened there. Mr. Levin continues on, saying, Who will strike that? Who was it that Lyle Menendez left with instead of you? Objection, irrelevant. The court says, All right, we've already had that. Mr. Levin says, What was it that came to your mind when you made the decision that Lyle Menendez might leave you? Objection, vague and irrelevant. At what time are you talking about? Talking about on August the 15th, 1989. Was there a specific reason why you felt that Lyle Menendez would leave you if you told him the danger that he would be put in? Aside from that specific time, I guess it was just different things over my life that made me think that he might leave me, different incidents over my life that made me think that. I want to move on to a little different subject concerning your mother. You had mentioned before that you feared your mother. Is that a correct characterization? Yes. Did you love your mother? Yes. Did you think that she loved you? She did. What kind of things did she do to frighten you? Objection. Or that frightened you? Objection, vague as to time. The court says, well, it would help if you would focus a little bit on some time frame. Mr. Levin says, was there any significant event or activity that occurred by your mother that caused you to fear her when you were a young child? His answer is, you just want one? No, just answer yes or no. Yes. So that right there means there were many incidents where he feared his mother. And do you have incidents in your mind, specific incidents in your mind, that caused you to answer that question that you feared your mother in the affirmative? Yes. Now, what is your earliest recollection of fearing your mother? Objection, irrelevant, vague as to time. Well, we won't know that until we have a time frame. Let's have a time frame first. Mr. Levin says, when, if you could tell us approximately how old you were when you first feared your mother. My memory does not go back that far. You might have had some memory blockages due to the abuse and the trauma. Did you ever not fear your mother? Not that I remember. So, would your description of your relationship with your mother be essentially a lifetime of events that caused you to fear her throughout your life? Objection leading. Overruled. Yes. Would the same be said for your father? Yes. Was there ever a time when you didn't fear your father? In general, or certain times? You mean a year or a day? I mean, there were certain days I knew he wasn't. Withdraw that. Did your mother and your father ever work together to scare you? Yes. And do you recall a specific incident where that occurred? Objection, irrelevant. How? None of the, so if you recall, there were times where the parents would leave the kids alone in the house and be gone for like a little while and then come back and like knock on the door and pretend like they were stranger and like really freak the brothers out. And they used to pull pranks and stuff like that on them all the time and laugh hysterically when all they were doing was scaring their own children, and they would laugh about it. So that's one specific incident that comes to mind. There might be more that I can't remember, but um I remember that. And they were little too. Like Erik was terrified when they did this like home invasion type thing, whatever it was. Like, oh, it was scary. And I remember, Erik testifying how terrified he was, and they're not going to let it in. So that's something, it's another red flag in this trial here. Do you recall a specific incident where that occurred? Objection, irrelevant. Court says, all right, you're asking, did this cause him to be in fear of the individuals? Yes, says Mr. Levin. Rephrase it in that way. Did your mother and your father ever do anything together that caused you to fear? Strike that. Did you fear your mother separately? Yes. Did you fear your father separately? Yes. And did you fear them as a unit together? Yes. Did your mother and your father ever do anything together that caused you to fear them as a unit? Yes. And what incident comes to mind? An incident where a mask fell off of my closet, or fell out of my closet, sorry. A mask fell out of my closet, an incident where I was in the basement, an incident where my mother would tell on me and I would get hurt by my dad, different times. You said there was an incident with a mask. What happened with a mask between your mother and your father that caused you to fear them as a unit together? Objection, vague as to time and irrelevant. Court says, all right, first establish a foundation as to time. Mr. Levin says, all right. As a result, strike that. Did you sleep well? Objection, vague as to time and irrelevant. Court says, it is vague. Like he doesn't push back on these questions. Once there's an objection, he doesn't re-ask these questions, and it's making me annoyed because that's what a good lawyer does. If you get the court to say, well, it is vague, then you rephrase your question and you make it less vague. This is like law school 101, probably. I don't know, but I would think. Mr. Levin says, following your sixth anniversary, when your father began to SA you, did you find that you had sleeping problems? The court says, sixth birthday, and that's what he meant, was by following your 6th birthday when your father began essaying you. Following his 6th birthday, yes. Objection, irrelevant, overruled. You can answer the question yes or no. The witness says yes. Did your problem in sleeping, was it related to something that would happen after you would go to sleep? Objection calls for speculation and confusion and improper opinion. Overruled. No audible response comes from the witness. Mr. Levin says, dreams? The witness says, are you saying, I don't understand the question. Did you have nightmares? Yes. And were there specific things that would come to you in these nightmares? Objection, irrelevant, sustained. Could you describe your nightmares? Objection, irrelevant. The court says, I think we're focused on the last inquiry was something to do with a fear-inducing incident, and now you've skipped on to something else. Mr. Levin says, it's related. Perhaps you can get to it. Mr. Levin says, I'm trying. Court says, do it another way. I like Stanley Weisberg less and less every day I read this transcript. Mr. Levin says, did you ever express that you had fear to your mother and your father? That was not a good thing to do. You decided that it wasn't a good thing to do before, but my question to you is, did you ever tell them that you were afraid of things? Yes. And did telling them that you were afraid of some particular thing result in them working together or to working together to really frighten you? Objection leading and irrelevant. Overruled. Yes. What was it that you told your mother, or first of all, who was it that you told of this fear? My mother. And what did you tell her? When I was about 10, I began to have horrible nightmares that would last for months, 3 months at a time, every night, and I told her that I couldn't get to sleep and I couldn't go to sleep, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would stay up because I was afraid to go back to sleep. So every night we had a ritual after that in which I would have her check the closets and the drawers and under the beds and every possible cubbyhole in my room, or I would do it. She was trying to get me to do it so I would not be afraid. My father didn't like the fact that I was having these nightmares, and so I told her about those. Now, you said you would check cubbyholes, closets, drawers. What were you checking for? The people, images, green face, a face of different animals that would be in my dream that would attack me, the different, I guess, monsters in my dream, different things that would happen in my dream. Would these monsters in your dream ever turn into human figures? My father. Well, if that doesn't tell you right there what this dream is about, or these dreams are about. And what monster did you see in your dream that would turn into your father? Objection assumes facts not in evidence. Overruled. A green face that would turn into my father. Now, was there a particular incident that occurred with respect to a green face where your mother and your father did something? Yes. Could you relate that to the jury, please? Was one night when I was doing the habit of checking the closets, and my mother told me that she wanted me to do it this time instead of her doing it. And so I went and was looking through different cubby holes and drawers, and I opened the closet, and a green masked face came out of the closet at me and jumped back. I jumped back screaming. What was your father's reaction? I didn't know my father was there. My father was around the corner waiting for me to open up the closet, and as soon as the mask came out and I screamed, he started laughing. He came around the corner and my mother started laughing. Does that sound like something most parents would do to their own children? Following that activity, did you continue to have these nightmares? The nightmares haven't ended. And they probably still haven't, to be quite honest. Did you ever, when you had a nightmare of this nature that you describe, did it ever cause you to wake up screaming or audibly voicing fear? Objection, irrelevant. The court says, could I have the question read back? Court says overruled. The witness says, yeah, actually, in looking back, I believe that's how my mother first became aware of the nightmares. And objection, non-responsive, calls for a yes or no. The witness says, yes. The court says, all right, I'll let the entire answer stand. Next question, please. Mr. Levin says, did your mother ever appear following you, waking up in the manner that you described? I would still be dreaming when she came into the room. I guess the answer is yes. Did she hold you and comfort you like a normal mom would do? Well, I would think that she was part of the dream and I would be frightened. uh, I would be fighting her. Sorry, I would be fighting her. And she would lift me and carry me down the hall. And I would be hitting and screaming because I thought she was an actual someone in the dream. And she would put me in her bathtub under the cold water. And that's when I would wake up and realize that was my mother. Objection, non-responsive, motion to strike. Overruled. The answer will stand. Mr. Khan does not want this evidence coming in about all of these instances of abuse, especially when they were young, as we know, because they had a huge argument over, an incident where Erik almost drowned in the lake due to Jose. And then what was the other thing? I can't remember, but there were a couple incidents. Mr. Levin says, your mother would take you into her bath in cold water to wake you out of your dream. Yes. But this was real. It wasn't part of the dream. Is that correct? Yes. But you thought it was. I didn't realize that it was. Yes. And then you'd wake up and realize it really had happened. Objection leaning. Overruled. Yes. Were there other incidents where, strike that, following several years of being essayed by your father, following several years, did you continue to cry? Were you emotional? Yes. And would your father react to you expressing this emotion? Yes. Did you find that you would cry at just about anything? No audible response. Did it take much to make Erik Menendez cry? I only cried when I was afraid, or basically when I was afraid. So, no, it didn't take much, I guess, to make me scared. Did your father ever express to you that you needed some training, toughening with respect to your emotional outbursts? Yes. And do you recall any specific incidents where your father and your mother did something to you to help you or to make you stop expressing fear? Objection, irrelevant. The court says, when you say stop expressing fear, what do you mean? Do you recall your mother and your father doing anything else together that caused you to fear them as a unit? Yes. And what incident comes to your mind? Objection, irrelevant. Overruled. A time when I was in the basement of one of my houses and with my mother, and she was getting some supplies out of the basement. And it was one of those basements that was unrugged. I didn't have a rug, it didn't have a rug floor. And so it was dark and she was leaving. And so I was following her up the stairs and she was getting too far ahead of me. And I was trying to catch up. And before I was able to get to the door, she closed it and turned off the lights. Then what happened? Objection, vaguest to time. Perhaps you could establish a time frame, age, or something of that nature. Mr. Levin says, how old were you when this occurred? I was 7. Go ahead, continue. And I was banging on the door for her to open up the door because it was pitch black in the basement and I was pounding and screaming out to her. And suddenly I started hearing a noise in the back of the basement down the stairs and I stopped and I listened and it was oohing. Oh, sorry. hit the mic with my hand because I got an itch. Sorry, sorry. Um, Let me back up. And suddenly, I started hearing a noise in the back of the basement, down the stairs, and I stopped and I listened, and it was oohing and booing. It was an oohing and booing sound, and immediately I started crying and screaming, and the sound was getting closer, and I could hear things moving in the basement, and just started panicking and continued banging on the door. Parents are monsters. Sorry, I have something in my eye now. Probably some mascara. What happened next? The sound got to the bottom of the stairs, and then I heard the slow steps getting closer to me, and I eventually the steps got closer and closer, and then the person grabbed me and screamed, and I screamed, and my mother opened up the door, and it was my father, and that's what happened. What was your father's reaction? He was laughing. What was your reaction? I was crying. Were you scared? Yeah. Wouldn't you be? Were you scared of the dark? I was terrified of the dark. Were you always afraid of the dark? Yes, probably because he never had autonomy and freedom to not be afraid of something coming at him. Was there particular times in your life that you found that you were afraid of the dark? Objection, irrelevant, overruled. Let me ask you this more directly. Did being afraid of the dark have any relationship at all, Mr. Menendez, to your father coming into your bedroom at night and essaying you? Yes. What was your feeling about being alone in dark rooms? What age? After you developed that fear. I was afraid of the dark before my father began essaying me, but after he started coming into the room at night, I began fearing other things. Like what? Like my father coming into the room at night. And did that cause you to be very aware of your surroundings and your environment? Objection, leading. Overruled. Yes. Hypervigilance. I talk about that often because I've had it and it's probably still do, but my medications probably dull it. But hypervigilance is not fun. You're super aware of everything going on in your environment because you're always afraid something's going to be a danger. So you're constantly on the lookout for sounds, noises, sounds like irk you sometimes, just hearing sounds, they seem louder and more obvious. And it's just like little things like that can get on under your skin and annoy the crap out of you too if you have hypervigilance. It gives you anxiety, bad anxiety. At least I speak for myself. Um, did that cause you to be very aware of your surroundings and your environment? Objection leaning. Overruled. Yes. Did little things mean a lot to you? Objection vague. Sustained. Did footsteps mean anything to you? Objection vague. Sustained. Push back on that. He just goes to the next question. I want to concentrate on your mother for a moment. You indicated that you feared your father, you feared your mother, and you feared them together as a unit. Why did you fear your mother alone as an individual? I spent more time with her in my life. You related an incident before where your mother at the dinner table had lied to your father, Jose Menendez, about something Lyle Menendez did that resulted in punishment to him. Did your mother ever do the same to you? Yes. And what kinds of things would she typically do? Objection, irrelevant. Court says, all right. Are you asking for an example? Mr. Levin says, yes. Overruled. Generally, it related to sports. Most things in my life did. And there would be a time when either my mother would forget something on the way to the tournament, and as a result, I would lose, or a time when she would pick me up late and I would be defaulted from a match. And then what did she tell your father? It depends on the time. Would she blame you for it? Yes. Would that result in anything happening to you? Yes. What? Either I would get slapped, sometimes I'd get beaten, depends on the severity of the incident which she blamed me for. So everyone that says, why Kitty? That's why. She was just as abusive as Jose, if not more. She was with them more. She neglected them severely, and she apparently enjoyed lying and getting them punished and whatnot. So I don't know. Would you ever tell your father that you had done, or did you ever tell your father that you had not done what your mother told him you had done? I would never do that. Why? I remember one time specifically when I was on the way to a tournament, and my mother, after she picked me up from school, I would get dressed and changed in the car. And after I had changed, I was looking for my tennis rackets in the back, and the tennis rackets were not there. And they were, Mr. Khan says, objection, this is non responsive to the question. The court says, could we get specifically to the point here? Are you kidding me? The witness says, my tennis rackets weren't there, and I brought it up to my mom. Again, I object, says Mr. Khan. This is still non-responsive. The court says, I assume he's trying to respond to the question, so let's hear the rest of the answer and we'll see. Yeah, you let the witness answer, and if you need to strike it, okay, but this isn't like he's trying to answer. The witness says, and I brought it up to my mom, and the rackets weren't in the car. And she said, well, you're just going to have to play with some other rackets, and it's not something that you just do in tennis. And eventually, I lost the match. On the way back home, I said to my mother, well, what are we going to tell Dad? And she said, well, you're just going to have to tell him you forgot your rackets at school. And I said, Dad's not going to be very happy with me for forgetting my rackets. And she said, well, you're certainly not going to tell him that I forgot my rackets or that she forgot my rackets. And I said, well, Dad's going to Dad's going to be not pleased that I lost the match because I forgot my rackets. And she made it very clear to me that she would be telling my father that and that she could punish me worse than my father if I did not go along with her story. See what I mean? Kitty was evil, man. Kitty had her own vindictive evilness inside of her that the state of California tries to cover up and pretend like she was Mother of the Year or something when we all know she didn't have a motherly bone in her body. Mr. Levin says, had your mother punished you for things before? Yes. What kinds of things would you be punished for or punished by your mother for? Objection. Irrelevant. The court says overruled. First of all, let's have some foundation. That's what I meant by punishment. Do you need some water? We have a brief pause. The court says, okay, let's resume. Mr. Levin says, thank you. How would your mother punish you? Objection vague as to what is meant by punishment. The court says, that's where we broke off. Mr. Levin says, what kind of things would your mother do when she punished you? She would lock me in my room. She would lock me in her closet in her bedroom. She would hit me. She would throw things at me. Things like that. Had you ever seen your mother enraged at you? Yes. And could you tell when your mother was enraged at you? Yes, it was clear. Would she do something that occurred very frequently that would show you that she was enraged? Yes. What was it? She would clench her fists together, tighten her jaw, and her face would shake. And she would get very red and she would grit her teeth. And she would start screaming and yelling and flailing or throwing things. Did your mother drink a lot of alcohol during your childhood? Objection, vaguest of time. He said childhood years. How's that not vague? Or, I mean, how is that vague? The court says overruled. You can answer the question. The witness says she did. Did she get drunk? Often. And would she be drunk when she was with you alone? Yes. Would she be drunk when she drove you places? Sometimes. Now, you mentioned punishment in a closet. What closet are you talking about? There was a long, narrow closet at the end of a narrow hallway in her bedroom that was her closet. Following the acts of SA, the years of SA by your father, did you find that you were having trouble in school concentrating? Objection, irrelevant. Overruled. Following or during? I'm sorry, during, but following years of it occurring. Huh? During the years that it's occurring, I guess, but after it started. The witness says yes. And did the concentration problems that you had cause you to do poorly in school? Objection, irrelevant. By your mother's standards. Objection, irrelevant. Sustained. Was performance in school by you critical? Objection, irrelevant. The court says it's also vague. Mr. Levin says, did your mother ever do anything with respect to the closet that caused you to fear her? Feared going in the closet. And what was it that she would do? Objection, vague as to time. Court says perhaps we can pinpoint when it was. Was the closet a frequent, usual occurrence for you? Yes. And did it occur over a period of your lifetime? Yes. What period of time did these closet incidents occur? He says appeared, but he meant they occurred when I was 7 and 8, and then for different reasons when I was in the 6th grade, 12, 13, 14, early 15. Now, were there specific reasons for your mother to put you in the closet? Yes. And when you were put in the closet, were you put in the closet for a period of time? Objection irrelevant. Laying a foundation, Your Honor. Overruled. The witness says yes. Did it vary with respect to the time? Yes. And what did it vary between? Between, depending on why I was in there, of course, anywhere from an hour to 12, 18 hours. This is a closet, no bathroom, being locked in there. And Lyle talked about being locked in the closet or being put under her bed, right? Like being forced to lay under her bed for hours at a time too. This is terrible. And no access to a bathroom, food, nothing. These poor kids. Did you ever have a choice with respect to being put in the closet? No. And who was it that would put you in the closet? My mother. Why did you fear the closet? Because I would be left in there for long periods of time and the lights were out at times, and I don't know why I feared it. I just did sometimes. It's that not knowing of when you're going to get out, probably. And what did the closet look like? It was very long, very narrow, and there were a lot of different things in there. It was about 9 or 10 feet high. Were you told to do anything when you were in the closet? Sometimes. And what were you told to do? I was told to finish or rewrite assignments or do work that she had put me in the closet to do. You did that in the dark? It just depended on why I was put in the closet. If I did the assignment wrong, I would stay in the closet for a lengthy period of time as punishment. It all depends on why I was in there. Did you have a chair? No, to sit on. Did you have a notebook or a clipboard to write on? I had a clipboard. Would you come out of the closet Could you come out of the closet when you had to go to the bathroom? If she was home. What if she wasn't home? She gave me a Tupperware container to go to the bathroom in. Seriously, this woman, I've said it before, the earth is probably a better place without the two of them on it. So, again, why are Erik and Lyle sitting in prison for this crime? We know the horrific things that she did to them, that both of them did to both of their children. And yet we're sitting here trying to, some people, not us, but some people are trying to sympathize with the people that hurt children repeatedly over and over again. And how did she know that you wouldn't come out of the closet? I didn't know at first. She just seemed to know, and I eventually discovered why. Why was it? She put a piece of paper on the outside of the door that when the door opened, it fell to the ground. And so if it was on the ground, she'd know that the door was opened. And if I wasn't, she'd know that the closet door had remained closed. Was there a time when you came out and that's how you found out? One of the times. What would happen if your mother found that you had left the closet? She would go into a rage and I would remain in there for the rest of the day until my father got home. Now, did you use the bin that she gave you? I didn't want to use it. I remember I used it once, otherwise, no. So, for all those times, the remainder of those times, he tried to hold it. What did you do if you had to go to the bathroom? I stored plastic bags and Ziploc bags in the closet for those times. And what would you do with those bags? I would go to the bathroom in the bags because I didn't want to turn over where I had gone to the bathroom to my mother when she got home. Also, he was hiding it, so he didn't have to admit that he went to the bathroom. So he hid Ziploc bags. I see. Were there other things that your mother had done to you that come to mind that caused you to fear her? Generally, just when she raged. I remember there was a specific time, something she did to Lyle or when she was drunk. Her mood swings are what I feared. Now, you had indicated before that there were things that you did not tell Lyle Menendez that had happened to you with respect to the details and extent of the brutality of the essay that your mother perpetrated on you. Isn't that correct? Doesn't he mean father? There are things that you didn't tell Lyle had happened to you, and I'm referring to Tuesday's conversation on August the 15th. Yes. Have you told those things yet to the jury? No, not all of them. You had indicated before that you had come to name certain types of sex with your father. Do you recall that testimony? Yes. And do you recall, strike that, the type of sex that you've described to the jury that was occurring before your 11th year, before it became violent? What was that name? Does that type of sex have a name to you? They were massages. So you called those massages. Yes. And the type of sex that your father had with you after 11 years old, you gave them specific names, and I'm asking you to repeat those names now. Knees, nice sex, rough sex, and then just sex. You have already described some incidents to the jury, and just so that I can be clear, how do you describe knees? Objection, asked and answered. Overruled. That's when my father would be in the room and have me get down on my knees in front of him, and, well, how frequently would knees occur? It was the most frequent. Was that where your father would require you to orally copulate him? Yes. Would he do the same to you during an act of knees? No. Was it prolonged? Was it short? How long did knees take? It was short and it was quick. Yes. And for that reason, did you, oh my God, he says enjoy, and then he says strike that. Did you favor knees above any of the other types of sex? Leading, objection leading, overruled. The witness says yes. And the other types of sex were more prolonged in terms of time. Yes. What would you, uh, or how would you characterize an act of nice sex? When my father would come into my room and he would have me take my clothes off, he would take them off with me, and then he would take off his clothes and different activities would happen. Why did you come to characterize that particular occurrence as nice sex? What was nice related to? The opposite. What do you mean opposite? The times when he would come into my room and he wasn't nice. Okay. But what was it about nice sex in the terms of describing it that would cause you to call that? I'm asking you to describe that. There was nothing nice except for my father's attitude. The only reason I came to call it that is because of rough sex. And what was sex? It was when my dad would come into my room and have sex. And what do you mean he would come into your room and have sex? He would enter me. He would sodomize you? Yes. And for what period of time in your life, Mr. Menendez, would your father sodomize you? Infrequently, till I was 18. From the time that you were what age to what age? 12 to 18. Remember, all of it started at 6. What about nice sex? What ages were you when your father performed nice sex? 12 years old and 6 months to 18. What about knees? 11 to 18. So from 6 to 11, it was as you described, and then following 11, you have come to label different types of sexual activity in the way that you just described it, with the exception of rough sex, which we haven't talked about yet. Right. Did you have a name for yourself during this period of time? Yes. And what name did you call yourself? Objection, irrelevant. The court says overruled. Erik says hurt man. Hurt man as in, and he spells it out. Yes. Did you tell anyone that your name was Hurt Man? Yes. And was that a name that you gave to yourself? Yes. Why did you give yourself the name Hurt Man? Because of the way I viewed life, I guess. How did you view your life? Just, I don't know how I viewed my life. I was just a boy and things were unorganized in my life and I would get hurt sometimes. So the hurt refers to sex? Some of it, yes. Did it refer to the way you felt? More so. And how old were you when you called yourself Hurt Man? I was 12. You were a boy? Yes. Objection, argumentative, overruled. Did you feel like a boy? Yes. Did you ever think of why you called yourself Hurt Man? Man? Didn't occur to me. M-A-N. That's just the name you gave yourself. Yes. Your Honor, could we take a break at this point? The court says, all right, we'll resume at 1:30. Don't discuss this case with anyone and don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume at 1:30. And that is where I leave you guys. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys as always. And I hope that you guys hug a love with the one and just remember that, time's precious on this earth with everything that's going on and just, be there for one another. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm just kind of brokenhearted about Charlie Kirk and the state of our nation. So just be kind to one another is my message. So I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye now.